Good evening, Lake Forest families. We are so thrilled to have you joining us tonight to learn a little bit more about Amplify CKLA. Thank you so much for your flexibility as we navigated towards recording this for everybody to be able to enjoy at your convenience. My name is Vale Kieser, and I have the absolute pleasure of serving as the Director of Teaching and Learning in Lake Forest. This is my second year here, and we have a big year for kids this year.
Hi, I'm Denise Galatsianos. I'm the district ELA coach, and I am in my 22nd year of serving students in District 67.
And I'm Jeff Dana Miller, and I work with Amplify as the Vice President of the Product Specialist Group. And we have been working very closely with Lake Forest as they have implemented Amplify programs.
And thank you to Jeff and to Denise for being here this evening. We're really excited just to share a lot of information with you tonight. So I wanted to start off with gratitude. Gratitude is so very important, and we have a lot of thank yous to make. First and foremost, I really want to thank our teachers. Our teachers have done a tremendous job with such a heavy lift implementing a new curriculum and a new resource. They've worked really hard. There's been lots of professional learning and really thinking through how can we make this super meaningful for students. So they've been amazing. I also wanted to thank our leaders in the district. So I'm thinking about our principals, our directors, our instructional coaches, everybody that's helped us to shape what this has looked like this year. There's been a lot of collaboration to ensure that we have the right supports in place. So thank you. Students, I want to make sure that I thank you as well. You are learning a ton and helping us learn so much this year. So we appreciate you more than you know. And to our families, thank you for your commitment and for your time tonight. Just taking the time to learn more with us as we navigate our year one implementation of Amplify. So here's our agenda for our brief 45 minutes we have together. We're going to provide a little bit of background information. How did we get where we are today? We want to talk about some celebrations that we've picked up through either our families, our students, our teachers, being in classrooms. We'd like to give you an overview of CKLA, and that's why Jeff Danmiller is here to really break it down for us and help us understand the intentional design of Amplify. And then we're going to end today with a Q&A. We were able to send out a form to parents ahead of time to really find out what are some questions that currently exist, and we'd like to be able to address those at the end. So let's go ahead and start with the background. Denise, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Hi, thank you. So I'm going to take you on a journey of our reading curriculum review. So Vale, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So the reading curriculum review began in the fall of 2021. So under the leadership of the Director of Teaching and Learning and in collaboration with the ELA committee, we embarked on phase one. In addition to an ongoing analysis of quantitative and qualitative data, there were two big goals for phase one. The first goal was to research best practice for reading instruction. So we did this by creating what we called a Reading Review Learning Academy. This after-school academy was open to all staff primarily responsible for the teaching of reading. The academy met several times to discuss and identify the highlights from research that we studied. And then from these highlights, the representatives recommended shifts in instruction to impact student growth moving into the 22-23 school year. The second big goal was around reviewing our core literacy beliefs. This was a collective process among the Reading Review Academy reps, the ELA committee, as well as the reading specialist team. So these representative voices ensured that our beliefs aligned to best practices that we confirmed during our research. So both of these steps, researching best practice and examining our core beliefs, were critical as we grounded ourselves in the preparation for phase two, which started in the fall of 2022. So next up was looking at standards, assessment, and instruction. So in partnership with Nicole Stroup from the Lake County Regional Office of Education and under the leadership, once again, of the Director of Teaching and Learning, we started out the year by looking at standards. We really wanted to answer, what do we want students to know? So we prioritized those English language arts standards. And in addition to that, we talked about what were best practices in assessment procedures. So if we knew what we wanted our kids to know, we also wanted to make sure that we were following best practices for how we would know it. So once we did that, we were now ready for the lofty part of moving into the resource review. All of those steps, from looking at best practice, examining our core beliefs, and then talking about standards and assessment and instruction, allowed us to have this solid foundation for the resource review, which would eventually lead to the pilot. So during this time, we had staff that were providing input throughout the whole process. Teacher representatives came together to survey materials that were vetted by research, and we also reached out to neighboring districts and national districts. We had publisher representatives come in and present so we could be well informed. And then from there, Vail developed and led what I would call a robust pilot plan that also included professional learning that involved every single teacher and every specialist involved in the teaching of reading in our district. So the pilot lasted for approximately 5 weeks, where we were looking at 3 different resources. And in the meantime, we had touch points with Amplify staff developers that were able to help us with our learning along the way, along with making connections with other districts locally and nationally. At the conclusion of the pilot, then, what we did was we also wanted to analyze our current resources and the piloted resources. And then lastly, we wanted to get the student voice. So we were able to collect data from our kindergarten students all the way up until our 5th grade team. At the end, Vail, as the Director of Teaching and Learning, compiled all the data and thus made a recommendation to the school board in April 2023 to adopt Amplify CKLA for our students kindergarten through 5th grade. And then also, as you can see, we also adopted Amplify ELA for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So that was the conclusion of phase 2 of our reading curriculum review. And then the very, very, very next day, we hit the ground running, preparing for phase 3 by planning out professional development. So as you can see, here is just a summary of all of the different opportunities that we've had from the spring of last year to current and moving on for the rest of the school year to ensure that teachers have what they need to instruct students and impact their literacy growth. So one of the first things that we did was we really wanted to make sure that all staff, including administrators, had an overview of the science of reading. And for that, we partnered with the Reading League. In addition to that, we have been partnering with the Reading League just for ongoing opportunities to ensure that everyone has a solid foundation of the foundational reading skills, from phonological and phoneme awareness all the way up to phonics and reading multisyllabic words and language comprehension. In addition to building our knowledge and a common language around the science of reading, we also continued to partner with the Amplify staff developers. In the summer, all staff involved in the teaching of reading were invited to participate in what we called a launch session. And then last month, we also had a touch point where we had staff developers come again, where we got to participate in what we called a strengthening session. In addition to that, we have lots of opportunities. We would call them like in-house opportunities, whether it was with during CII or release time, where we're coming together as teams and we're looking at upcoming units, what we might call unpacking those, referencing our data as we plan instructional decisions, and being able to do ongoing collaborative work for lesson planning. And that also is occurring, as you can see, with coaching relationships within the building and district level. And then finally, another professional learning opportunity that's coming up this Friday is we have national author Natalie Wexler coming to share a lot about how she wrote her text about the knowledge gap. For not only are we talking about those foundational skills, but we want to make sure that students have a solid understanding and looking at the language comprehension. And I know Jeff is going to talk a little bit more about the simple view of reading in that. But as you can see, from phases 1 to 2 over the past 2 years, we have been busy thinking about how we can continue to impact our students' literacy growth from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade.
All right, thank you, Denise, for that beautiful background, and thank you for your leadership in that as well. I know that you've made such a tremendous impact on our system, so we thank you for that. I wanted to take a moment and just kind of highlight some of our celebrations thus far this year. There have been so many with our students and with our staff, and just the feedback that we've been getting. For example, we've really, the biggest piece of feedback has been how comprehensive Amplify has been for our staff in order to ensure we are providing the best instructional support for our students. We have seen things like truly explicit vocabulary, targeted grammar and spelling practice. Students are learning so much through those knowledge units, and they are engaged in the different topics that they're looking at. So that's been really, really neat to see. We've gotten feedback about just the levels of integration, so the reading and writing and everything going together. And one of my favorite comments from a principal was just hearing the students and how they're speaking this year, really forming their thoughts in complete sentences, which is really, really neat to see. So lots of celebrations. Let's get you some pictures in the classroom though too, so we can see our own students. Here we have some younger students that are really focusing on those CVC words. They're really focusing on the foundational skills, really engaged in the lesson, working with those letters and sounds. Here we have third grade students that are working on vocabulary. Again, lots of explicit vocabulary. It amazed me walking through classrooms, seeing what students are doing with that, as well as engaging in some research. So researching some different topics. And then these are some of our fourth graders who are working on their fluency, either in partner pairs or on their own. And then that writing piece too, which we know is an area we were looking at through this reading review as well. So all in all, lots of celebrations. It's really fun to be in the classrooms. If you have not yet done so, families, I would encourage you to check out social media. We have lots of celebrations to share there beyond what I've shown you here. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, because we're going to get to the good part of what is Amplify CKLA, and he's going to break it down for us a little bit more so that you have more knowledge as families.
Great. Thanks, Phil. And Denise mentioned earlier that one of the big components of beginning this review was that training in the science of reading. And Amplify CKLA is a program that is grounded in the science of reading. To give you just a quick look at what that means, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see this right here. And we're going to get into a little bit about what that science of reading is all about. So let me do it this way, though. Sorry, I stopped sharing.
All good.
Let me do it this way. I got you.
Territory tonight, Jeff.
I got you. Here we are, right here. Let's look at it this way, if it's okay. The science of reading is right here. This is probably the best way for me to show it to you. Okay. It's a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. And understand that this research is not brand new. It's been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world, and it's derived not just from one study, but thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. And there is evidence, basically, 2 really important elements on how proficient reading and writing develop, and also about why some people have difficulty developing reading and writing, and how we can most effectively assess, teach, and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention and intervention for reading difficulties. And probably, if you want to know more, if you're really interested in understanding the science of reading, there's a couple of podcasts out there which are great places to start. One is the Science of Reading podcast. You can find it anywhere, and they release a new topic every 2 weeks. And then there's a great series called Sold a Story, which it really investigates how reading instruction has shifted over the last couple decades to include, the importance of the science of reading in that instruction. Now, what do we actually mean? When we think about developing as a reader and understanding text, reading to gain meaning, there are 2 important elements of this. The first one is word recognition, right? Understanding that letters or sounds are represented by letters, and letters make up words. Decoding. But that's just one element into gaining meaning. The other thing that's really important in this simple view is language comprehension. is tying what you already have in your head, the knowledge you already have in your head, with that word that you're seeing on the page. Both of those elements are important in understanding meaning and making meaning from text. So, what does it actually look like in a kind of a graphic representation? This is what's known as the Scarborough rope, research done by Hollis Scarborough, that really gives you a graphic representation of all those skills that we all need to become successful learners. And there's two key areas. That area on the top, language comprehension, background knowledge, vocabulary, language structure, verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, all of those, we basically develop from birth through listening comprehension and through experiencing lots of different language. But the bottom of that rope, that concept of phonological awareness, decoding, sight recognition, seeing letters on a page and making sense of those letters, we don't come by that naturally. That has to be explicitly taught. So what does this mean in terms of Amplify? What this means is that in grades K, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, okay, those 3 grade levels, there's dedicated time every day to understanding those foundational skills. And it's called the skill strand. So every day, 60 minutes a day is devoted to building up that phonological awareness, moving into phonemic awareness, understanding the code necessary to make sense of language. But then there's another 60 minutes every day that's devoted to language comprehension, building that really important critical background knowledge so that students can expand that vocabulary and that verbal reasoning and that literacy knowledge. And then in third grade, because of the way that students have progressed in grades, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, in third grade, no longer are there 2 strands of instruction. Every day, the students will experience one integrated block of time where they're reading, writing, speaking, listening, building up vocabulary and morphology and grammar and spelling, all of those things in one integrated experience. So knowing this, we're going to take a quick look at each of those elements. We're going to start with K2 skills, and then we'll move into K2 knowledge, and then we'll look at grades 3 through 5 and what that integrated time frame looks like. So let's start with the bottom of that rope, foundational skills. And in Amplify, when students enter kindergarten, in that very first unit, they're working specifically with phonological awareness, like recognizing sounds and separating sounds. And it starts with environmental sounds like bells and drums and hand claps, so that teachers get an idea. Do students understand like where a sound begins and where it ends? Because all language is processed first through sound. But then they move out of that fairly quickly into phonemic awareness, separating first words in sentences and then sounds within words. And if your students have come home and they're, blending words and segmenting using gestures like mouse, that's coming from Amplify CKLA, where they're understanding the sounds that make up words. But through kindergarten, students will work through basic code. And what basic code is are about 40 of the most common sound spellings in the English language, are the easiest ones to grasp. And they're applying those in reading. And then through first grade and second grade, students work through advanced code. Because as a lot of you probably know, there are 44 individual sounds in English, but there are multiple ways to spell those sounds. So by the end of second grade, the students in Amplify will have worked through over 150 individual sound spellings, so that by the time they hit third grade, they can use a decoding approach to almost any word. And then third, fourth, and fifth grade can focus on word parts, morphology. So that's kind of the overall view. Now, when we look at like how individual sounds are taught in Amplify, of course, we're going to start with listening and start with verbalizing those sounds. So for example, in this lesson where students are learning the sound, they're going to repeat words that have that sound in them. And they're going to hear that sound in language first. And then they're going to even, play games and use, in this case, sound riddles, where they're going to get a riddle like, this is the color of some grapes. And it's also the color you get when you mix red and blue. And of course, that sound word that fits that riddle is purple. And we're going to play with that first and then slowly begin to translate that into written language. And they're going to then introduce that E and that R. And in Amplify CKLA, as students are working, they're also developing their handwriting skills, right? So we're going to write sound words, and they're going to answer questions with sound words in them to make that connection between the sound and the spelling and the representation of that word, of that sound, And then from there, they're going to apply that very intentionally again in in reading. Let's start there first. Reading. And in this case, they're going to read a book called The Green Fern Zoo. And in that book, every single chapter is going to be devoted to those sounds that they have been working with. What's beautiful about these books, and they are what we call decodable readers, meaning every single sound spelling that a student encounters in these readers that they have in their hands at grades kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, every single sound spelling that they see has been previously explicitly taught. And so it reinforces the decoding skills that teachers have been working with them on, and they're applying it as they read, for example, here about river otters. But they don't only use these books for decoding. They're going to use these books also for comprehension. So they're going to respond to, detailed, in-depth comprehension questions where they're actually citing page numbers where they found the evidence to support what they have answered. And then they're also using these books as mentor texts or model texts for writing. So, for example, after they read about all the critters in the Green Fern Zoo, they're going to write their own profile of a critter based on what they have read in that decodable text. So that's a little bit about K2 skills. Let's move in now to see how knowledge actually builds and the importance of background knowledge and what that means. When you think about the top of that rope, vocabulary, sentences, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge, and you think about those students in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, what's the best way for them to build knowledge? Well, it comes down to this really important question. How old are we when our ability to understand what we read on a page catches up to our ability to understand what we hear? At what age does reading comprehension catch up to listening comprehension? Well, again, just like everything else grounded in the science of reading, there's research behind this question. Listening comprehension and reading comprehension don't catch up to each other until about age 13. So when you think about those students in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, ages 5, 6, and 7, you can see on this graph that there's a big discrepancy. Students can listen and understand on a lot higher level than they can decode and read words on a page. So we're going to take advantage of that. And I'll show you how that happens. But we're going to take advantage of that within texts that build knowledge. And when you look here at the topics that we're dealing with in that knowledge strand in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, you're going to notice some commonality. You're going to notice that your students are working with literature and culture, but they're also working with social studies and science topics, building academic knowledge as they work through listening comprehension and vocabulary. And here's what happens. CKLA, we throw that term around a lot. It stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts. And that core knowledge piece, that CK, is what we're talking about here. The core academic knowledge that students need to know to be successful, as they move into middle school and as they move into high school and beyond. So, for example, when we look at science topics, in kindergarten, students are learning about plants, and they're learning about farms, they're learning about the 5 senses. In first grade, they're learning about astronomy, and they're learning about the human body and the history of the earth and animals and habitats. In second grade, they're learning about insects, and they're revisiting the human body, and they're learning about cycles in nature. And as this moves over into grades 3, 4, and 5, you see that those academic topics build upon each other year over year. And it's intentional. This instruction is sequenced to provide that deep understanding and that deep knowledge over time. But when you think about kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, understanding that that listening comprehension is so much higher, what does that actually equate to? Well, it equates to teachers presenting these academic topics using read alouds. All the students gather on the carpet, and the teacher begins every unit with a great trade book that they're going to read to those students to help to introduce them to that topic and build that background knowledge. And these are just some examples of those trade books. For example, in the insects unit in second grade, we're going to start that unit with a read aloud about insect bodies. And students are going to learn about insects, but more importantly, they're going to build a little bit of background knowledge and get some of that vocabulary that's going to help them as they continue learning about insects. And every day, the students are going to read and the teacher is going to tell a story to these students about different insects. So, one day they're going to learn about caterpillars and butterflies, and one day they're going to learn about ladybugs, and one day they're going to learn about ants and termites. But every one of those read alouds begins with a little activity where we're going to take what we learned yesterday and connect it to what we're learning today, building that knowledge. And so every day the teacher's going to tell a new story. And then in this unit, every day the students have little homemade insect journals that they're going to take notes in. So even, in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, students are recording things. Like in this case, they're drawing pictures of those insects and they're writing a few facts about those insects. And then they learn by the end of the unit about entomologists and how they study insects. And they're going to do things like label the parts of an ant, and they're going to write stories, in this case, insect stories, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So they're not just writing in the skills time, but they're also writing in the knowledge time at grades K through 2. So in grades K through 2, when you think about the two sides of that rope, both sides of that rope are being developed so that those foundational skills, like decoding, those skills become more automatic over time. And the literacy knowledge skills, those become more strategic over time. Like students learn how to employ those skills and how to use that vocabulary in a strategic way over time. So that in third grade, this is where things are going to change. And in third grade now, those two strands are integrated into one strand. And so every day in third, fourth, and fifth grade, students are working with a wide range of those skills. They're reading, they're writing, they're doing vocabulary, spelling, morphology, grammar, integrated into one block. And now, every time students begin a new unit, they get a new reader that's going to cover that topic. Like, for example, here, Empires in the Middle Ages, the students get a book, and they're going to be in that book for about 3.5 weeks until they move into that next unit. And they're going to have an activity book. And that workbook is where they're going to be doing all of that integrated work. So what does a lesson look like then for those grades, those typical lessons in grades 3, 4, and 5? Well, that time is going to be, that one block is going to be divided into different sections. So for example, here in this lesson from Empires in the Middle Ages in fourth grade, students are going to spend some time reading and discussing. But then they're going to spend some time in grammar, and they're going to spend some time in morphology, and then they're going to spend some time writing. So what does it look like? It starts with that reading piece. And so they're going to open up those readers. And in this lesson, they're going to read all about the Middle Ages and lords and serfs in the Middle Ages and their roles in the community. And this is going to be culminated with a great discussion. And again, we talk a lot about intentionality in CKLA. So, your students are going to be working with first those kind of literal, did you understand what you read questions, but then they're going to get deeper with evaluating and inferential thinking. So they're using their brain and they're solidifying this important content knowledge because they're going to need this knowledge about lords and serfs when they do their writing. How does that work? I'll show it to you in a minute. But first, they're going to go to comprehension questions. And again, just like what you saw in first grade, those comprehension questions are going to ask them deep, detailed questions. And they're going to, again, cite page numbers where they found the evidence to support those answers. And then the teacher is going to take them through that grammar time and that morphology time. And in those workbooks are activity pages where they can display their skills, right? And show what they know about grammar and morphology. And then they're going to move into writing. And in this case, in this lesson, they're working on an informative paragraph. And this informative paragraph has some really key elements. And again, the instruction is explicit for those students so they know exactly what to expect. And then the teacher is going to guide them through, first of all, organizing their thoughts. What were the homes of lords like? What were the homes of serfs like? And as the teacher displays this, the students actually have this same, what we call graphic organizer in their workbooks. And so they're filling this out at the same time. And ultimately, this organization of their thoughts is going to result into a thoughtful, informative paragraph on lords and serfs. And then the last thing I want to leave you with, which I think is great for grades 3, 4, and 5, is that there's one unit each year that really focuses on collaborative learning or project-based learning. In 3rd grade, there's this amazing unit called Far From Home, a Viking's Journey, where your students actually become Vikings and they travel from one country to another. And there's a problem in each country that they have to work together to solve. And then in 4th grade, there's this amazing unit called Eureka Student Inventor, where the students participate in a game show, very much like Shark Tank, okay, where they have to research an invention and then pitch that to a team of inventors. And then in 5th grade, your students are exposed to Shakespeare. We partnered with the Folger Shakespeare Library, and they get to do this great readers theater of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And they get this Shakespeare experience early on in their schooling because they're going to see Shakespeare again over and over again, you know, as they move through school. And so really to come back to those two key elements in CKLA, one is that language comprehension and building that important background knowledge that's going to help students to be able to make meaning of a text so that they have something in their head that connects to what they read. But then the other piece, of course, is that explicit, systematic instruction of foundational skills, decoding, spelling, handwriting, that element as well, so that both pieces of that simple view of reading are covered. So, Vale, that's all I have. I'm going to turn it back over to you now so that you can take it over from here. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I was navigating, unmuting myself and sharing my screen. So all the fun things. Jeff, thank you for such a lovely overview of CKLA. I really appreciated hearing the intentional design, you know, the research. That's something that we really relied heavily on during the process of how we came to come to the conclusion of Amplify CKLA. One of the things that we had an opportunity to do ahead of this meeting then was to send out a survey to our families to see, are there any other things that are on your mind? So we wanted to address just a couple things, and these are coming really from both our families as well as some of our teachers. So we just wanted to put them out here. But I think what's really important to acknowledge is that this has been a huge shift for our system. We are changing practice and doing some really cool things for kids. I thanked our teachers earlier for the heavy lift because anytime you're trying something new, it does require a lot of thought and understanding and collaboration. And I've been blown away. I've been blown away by our staff and how they are really thinking through how to help our students, you know, meet their potential. So one of the things that we've been talking about, and Jeff, I'm going to pick your brain after this. I'm curious if these are questions that other communities have during first year implementation too. So be ready with that. But one of the things we've been talking about this year has been just the pacing, the overall pacing of the lessons. As we're navigating, it does require a lot of time. Some of these topics that we're learning about, we may not have studied in lots of years. So it's us building up our vocabulary as staff and as adults too. But thinking about how to pace that out over time. Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? So that's been something that we've been navigating. I think another thing that's a very valid point, one of the questions brought up from our families was that it's wonderful that we have the implementation of this now. How are we meeting the needs of all of our students? So for example, students that weren't previously in these Amplify units, I'm thinking of our older students, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they didn't necessarily have this scope and sequence from Amplify previously. So the question is, how are we scaffolding for those students that may need more? And on the other end, students who already have it, how are we extending? So, just for the community to know, that is absolutely part of our conversations this year. We have been thinking all along about implementing the resource of Amplify while also looking at data to make decisions and really meeting our students where they're at. We do have students who need a lot more support. We need to be able to scaffold for them, as well as students who maybe are already very proficient readers. So part of that process comes through data meetings that are held at every single one of our schools. I know that all of our schools also have goals tied to our school improvement plans as well. So definitely navigating lots of those conversations. I think too, one of the big ahas for me is that we really are providing very rigorous text for each and every child that walks through our doors, and that can be really tricky too. So how to make sure that we are really holding our students to high expectations, and ultimately we are all going in the same direction of we want our students to leave District 67 being proficient readers and writers, being able to speak and listen, and all of that communication. So just know that if that's on your mind, that is absolutely ongoing conversation using best practice and data to drive what we're doing. The last piece I wanted to just mention here from Amplify CKLA that we've had a lot of conversation about has been assessment. So past practice, we did not have as rigorous of assessments. And part of our learning this year has been really navigating how to use the information we're getting from these assessments for our students. They definitely look a lot different, but we're getting some really good information. And again, that goes back to our collaboration. So Denise had mentioned earlier some of that professional learning opportunities. Our goal is to help ensure that our teachers have the support so that they can best take care of their kids. That's our philosophy, and something that we've really tried to be very intentional with while we've made such a big shift in our system. So very, very exciting things. Jeff, what are your thoughts? Anything I just talked about, is that surprising? Other communities experiencing the same thing?
Um, what I'm seeing here, Vale, is fairly common with schools that make this shift in the beginning, because you're doing this at every grade level. And so, as you mentioned, there will be students, especially in grades 3, 4, and 5, that haven't had that background knowledge, or maybe they haven't had that explicit systematic phonics, and there are gaps that show up that are evident in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Obviously, at Amplify, we have resources to address that, and I know that we're working with you to implement some of that. But one thing that I do see across the board as schools implement Amplify CKLA is it just gets better every year, because you have more students having more experiences with this intentional instruction, and it builds. And so I'm excited about because you've started at a really high level already, and I'm just very excited to see what the future holds in Lake Forest for all of your students.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, it's been very exciting, and we have had the opportunity throughout this whole process. Part of our research was getting in touch with other districts that have implemented Amplify and really picking their brains and understanding some of our questions. And it's been really wonderful feedback, just as far as the longer that you're in it, the light bulbs click, and we see really that growth, and students the next year coming in with even more skills and knowledge than they had the year before. So we are super excited. The future is definitely bright for our students here in Lake Forest. So with that being said, one of the things that we wanted to address here too is how can you support at home? You should have been receiving these caregiver letters that our teachers are sending home before different units. What I love about these is they give you a brief overview about what the students will be learning, but also some conversation starters, things that you could be asking your students and your children at home. What I love about this, and some of the feedback we've gotten from parents, is that students are coming home and sharing more than ever. The human body is a really great example of students singing songs and being able to name different body parts and things like that. So again, that goes back to that vocabulary. We're already seeing some really, really nice things. So beyond these caregiver letters, obviously our partnership is really important to us too. So making sure we're partnering with our teachers. We have actually also been in touch with the Lake Forest Library. They were very curious about Amplify, and we've been able to provide them with the different knowledge topics because we've had some families going to the library to get some books. So check out your local library. Um, and lastly, I wanted to mention the beautiful Amplify Caregiver Hub. So if you go online, you can find a caregiver hub from Amplify that has more resources and other explanations. But I know we weren't able to be live with you this evening. We did want to make sure that we took the time to record this presentation and have it for you as soon as possible. It's really great information. And again, we value our partnership together. The fact that you're taking the time tonight as a family to learn more about Amplify CKLA, we appreciate you. At the end of the day, we all share the same goal, right? We all share the same goal that we want our students to thrive. And as they leave the doors of Lake Forest 67 and head into the high school, we want to make sure that we are really encompassing our portrait of a learner, this really valuable work that was done over the past couple of years, and ensuring that our students leave with us with proficient readers, writers, and conquering the world. So Jeff, thank you so much for your time this evening from directly from Amplify. Denise, we appreciate your leadership as well. And again, just a huge shout out to our teachers, our students, and our families. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.